The emergency beacon pulsed red through the sterile corridors of the Ilythari Medivessel Caltheron Spire, casting a grim glow on the crew as they scrambled into position. Sirens howled in a rising pitch, followed by the sharp command of the Triad commander, Mekith. Containment breach in Sector 12. All field medics to armor stations. Prep tranquilizer lances and netting drones. The usual calm professionalism of the Spire's medical crew was gone. Panic threaded their movements. The creature in question, codenamed Varax 7, was not just a specimen, it was a biological anomaly. Nearly 3 meters tall, covered in semi-chitinous plates, and capable of tearing through reinforced composite like it was dried kelp. They'd brought it aboard sedated, confined in a reinforced tank. It had woken up early. Mekith's dorsal fins twitched as it hurried into the armory, where others were already suiting up. The lead tranquilizer specialist, Frel, loaded a dart the size of a human femur into a shoulder cannon. How did it get out? Frel barked without looking up. Sedative levels dropped after the atmospheric recalibration in cargo bay, Mekith replied. Someone forgot to log the pressure compensation. Perfect. So now we have a rampaging apex predator loose on a medical ship. Who's writing this report? Frel's sarcasm went ignored as the squad moved out. Down in the lower decks, chaos had already taken hold. Emergency bulkheads had slammed shut, isolating sectors. Lights flickered. Screeches echoed against alloy walls. The Varax had torn a path through the holding bay, shattered a medical bot in half, and disappeared into the waste filtration corridor. It was headed toward the hydroponics dome, one of the few areas still housing organic material, and, unfortunately, a small team of planetary surveyors. The medics moved in a tight formation. Drones flanked them, scanning for movement, while nets and shock emitters buzzed with charge. Signal from the hydroponics dome just went dark, said the tech officer over comms. We're losing visuals. Mekith hissed through clenched teeth. Double pace. We lose that dome, we lose half our oxygen production. The team rushed forward, passing broken panels and bent bulkheads. The smell of scorched circuitry and sterilizing agents filled the air. As they reached the airlock to the dome, the lights inside flickered. One of the drones twitched, then hovered back nervously. Thermal scan shows the Varax inside, said Frel. Movement slowing. That doesn't make sense. Open it, ordered Mekith. The airlock cycled with a groan. Everyone raised their weapons. What they saw when the doors opened stopped them cold. In the middle of the dome, surrounded by shattered planters and overturned soil beds, was the Varax. Its massive form loomed over a human male crouched calmly on the floor. The creature's jagged breathing was slowing, its claws twitching less. It sniffed the air, then leaned down. The man extended a hand, holding what looked like a silver-wrapped bar. The Varax snatched it, sniffed it, then shockingly ate it. Who the void is that? Mekith whispered. Zalen Ridge, came a voice from behind them, and a second figure stepped into view, a medical officer from the planetary survey team. Exo-agronomy specialist. He was supposed to be on the shuttle out. Mekith blinked all 3 eyes. He's feeding it. The Varax gave a low rumble and nudged Zalen's side with the edge of its claw. Zalen winced, but didn't move away. Yeah, the officer said. With protein bars. He said it reminded him of a stressed dog. Frel lowered his tranquilizer cannon slowly. That's not a dog. That's 300 kilos of muscle and trauma response. Inside the dome, Zalen tore another protein bar in half and held it out. The Varax accepted it without hesitation. Easy, he muttered. You're not mad. You're scared, huh? Just scared. I know that look. Mekith stepped forward, cautiously. Zalen Ridge, he called. Step away from the specimen. That'll just freak it out again, Zalen replied without turning. It's not attacking anymore. I think it was just hungry. And confused. Maybe in pain. The Varax shifted slightly. Its tail curled around a pile of soil, but it made no move to strike. You're injured, Frel pointed out. Yeah, I know. Cracked rib, I think. Maybe a sprain in my left wrist. It threw me a bit when I first ran into it, but I didn't fight back. I just waited. Then I noticed it eyeing my gear back. I gave it a bar. It calmed down. The medical team exchanged glances. You said it reminded you of a dog, Mekith said. You've had dogs? Yeah. Grew up with a golden retriever named Dusty. He used to get like this during storms. Hide under the table, shaking. Give him a snack, he'd be fine. You're comparing this to storms. Frel muttered, baffled. The Varax licked its claws, then curled slightly beside Zalen like a massive, armored cat. Mekith turned to the team. Lower weapons. Prepare a sedative patch. Slow absorption. No need for the hard stuff, Zalen added. Let it eat. I've got a few more bars. Won't hold forever, but it'll keep it calm long enough for you to prep something gentler. Why would it respond to you? Frel asked, stepping closer but keeping one eye on the creature. You're not trained in xeno behavior. Nope. But I've been around enough scared animals to know what fear looks like. And it looked terrified when I found it. So I sat down and waited. Mekith nodded slowly. You're lucky you weren't torn apart. I didn't feel lucky when it knocked me into a hydroponic vat, Zalen muttered, holding his side. But after that, it stopped. Watch me. Like it wasn't sure what to do. The dome was quiet now. Tension slowly faded from the medic's postures. Let's get you checked out, Mekith said. And secure the Varax. But not with force. Just don't jab it with anything sharp, Zalen said. Let me walk it to the tank. You're not walking it anywhere, Frel replied. Your rib could puncture a lung if it's broken. Then someone hand me a scanner, Zalen said, exasperated. But let's not drag this out. It's staying with me for now. Mekith looked at the medic officer, who nodded. Give him the scanner. And prep a drone to follow with a sedative mist, slow release. No sudden movements. As a medic handed over a compact bioscanner, Zalen ran it across his side. He winced. Confirmed fracture, he said. At least one rib. Wrist just sprained. You'll be off active duty for weeks, the medic said. Yeah, well, it beats being chewed on. The Varax shifted again, brushing against Zalen's back. He didn't flinch. Easy, buddy. You're gonna be fine. Mekith turned to the rest of the group. Everyone else, clear the dome. Let Ridge lead it back. We'll monitor from the control deck. One by one, the medics backed out, leaving Zalen alone with the creature. He took a deep breath. You ready to go back to your tank, big guy? The Varax let out a low rumble, then stood. It didn't resist as Zalen walked slowly toward the exit, protein bar in hand. It followed, massive claws clicking gently against the floor. Outside, the medics watched in stunned silence as a man with a broken rib led the galaxy's most unpredictable apex predator down the corridor like it was a well-fed pet. Frel turned to Mekith. I don't know whether to promote him or ban him from every future mission. Mekith's fins twitched in thought. Let's start with a full psych evaluation. And restock the snack dispensers, Frel added. Apparently, we're doing diplomacy with granola bars now. The Varax's claws clicked softly on the composite floor, each step deliberate but soundless, like it understood the need for quiet. Zalen walked a half step ahead, right wrist splinted and bound to his chest, ribs taped tight beneath a fresh med wrap. His breaths were shallow and controlled. Not from fear, though some of that lingered, but because every deep inhale lit up his side like a struck nerve. The corridor ahead was cleared, lights steady. Drones tracked from a safe distance, one of them misting a barely visible vapor from its undercarriage. The Varax gave it a glance, but ignored it entirely. I'm not usually allowed this far into the core labs, Zalen said without turning. Something about unauthorized personnel and biological integrity zones. The Varax made a low huff, deep enough to stir his hair. He took that as agreement. Same rules on Earth, really. Touch the wrong petri dish, and suddenly you're patient zero for moldpocalypse. Behind them, the only other sound was the gentle hum of the drone's propulsion. The rest of the team had fallen back several corridors, too cautious or too stunned to stay closer. As they reached the reinforced observation ring outside specimen containment, the bulkhead hissed open with a slow exhale. Inside, the reconstituted tank had been modified. No restraints visible anyway, and the feeding quadrant had been stocked with nutrient gels and a few cubes of rehydrated biomass. Zalen hesitated at the threshold. You sure this is the right way in? He asked the drone. It pinged once. Affirmative. The Varax brushed past him gently and stepped into the chamber. The lights adjusted to a softer spectrum. It sniffed the air, then moved directly to the gel basin and dipped its snout in. Guess we're good, Zalen said, exhaling. A voice crackled over the overhead speaker. Please step back from the threshold. We're sealing the chamber. He stepped out. The doors sealed with a hiss and click. For a moment, he just stood there, watching the Varax eat. Then, you're limping. He turned. Mekith stood a few paces away, not in armor this time, but the sterile gray of command scrubs. Its fins lay flat and relaxed, but the vertical pupil of its left eye flexed slightly, an involuntary sign of unease in its species. Favoring the right leg, Mekith added. Wasn't noted in your scan. I didn't mention the knee, Zalen said. Didn't want to complicate the release protocol. You concealed an injury. It's just bruised. Soft tissue. I've done worse falling off a ladder. You let a classified specimen through active medical corridors with a compromised gait. Zalen leaned against the wall, pain spiking in his ribs as he did. I also didn't die. So maybe we can call it even. Mekith blinked twice. I've reviewed your personnel file. No formal xenopsychology training. No documented experience in high-threat containment. You've been cited twice for bypassing lab protocol. Once to grow unauthorized earth flora in a sealed dome. Once for redirecting hydroponic nutrients to a personal sample tray. That basil was thriving, Zalen muttered. Explain how you managed to pacify a creature bio-scanned as non-communicative, hyper-reactive, and sensory volatile. He shrugged. It was hungry. And scared. Most things get mean when they're either. You're simplifying a situation that nearly resulted in fatalities. I'm simplifying it because it worked. You think I had a plan? He waved with his uninjured arm. I tripped over a broken planter and landed in nutrient mulch. It didn't attack, so I offered it a snack. That's what happened. Mekith studied him for a long moment. We're bringing in a behavioral xenologist from Ilythari Prime. Until then, you're restricted to medbay and observation status. I just want a shower and a chair that isn't bolted to the floor. You'll have both. The behavioral specialist arrives within 3 cycles. You will participate in debriefings. Fine. But don't let them poke it with anything sharp. Mekith didn't respond. It turned and left without another word. Zalen watched the Varax through the glass. It had finished eating and was now curled in the far corner, claws tucked under its plated forelimbs, eyes half closed. Better nap spot than the dome, he said quietly. Several hours later, Zalen sat in an isolated medbay suite, wrapped in a thermal blanket, sipping something vaguely citrus-flavored from a squeeze pouch. A small holographic display floated over his lap, showing biometrics, heart rate steady, blood oxygen optimal, rib fracture healing with standard acceleration protocols. Nothing alarming. Nothing interesting. The door slid open without a chime. Frel entered, still wearing environmental boots but no gear. He carried a data pad and a wrapped package. I brought this, Frel said, setting the package down on the side table. It's not officially sanctioned. Zalen raised an eyebrow. Contraband. Something like that. He unwrapped the package. Inside was a small, oblong bar metallic wrapper with Earth script. Protein bar, Zalen said. Where'd you get this? Storage requisition log said non-essential rations, human compatible. I figured it might be useful. You really think I'm going to go back in there with a snack pouch and start a trend? No. I think we're going to need you to help with the specialist. Zalen leaned back, winced, then adjusted the blanket. They don't want my help. They want me to stay put and not complicate the narrative. Frel sat on the edge of the diagnostic bench. You gave that thing 6 bars over the course of 40 minutes. That's 6 interactions where it didn't react violently. That's 6 data points more than anyone else has managed. You sound like you're arguing in my favor. I'm trying to find out if you're an anomaly or if we've misunderstood the entire behavioral profile. Zalen opened the protein bar and took a bite. You ever try talking to it? It doesn't talk. No, I mean not with words. Just sit near it. Let it see you. That's what I did. You could have died. I was about 5 seconds from passing out anyway. Figured it could finish the job or not. Frel watched him chew for a moment. You really don't think it's aggressive by nature? I think it doesn't understand us. And we sure as hell don't understand it. You're not trained for this. You keep saying that, like it makes a difference. Frel stood. It shouldn't. But somehow it does. He left without saying goodbye. 3 days passed. Zalen wasn't allowed near the containment chamber. Instead, he was given access to the observation deck, where a rotating team of specialists recorded the Varax's every movement. The creature hadn't reacted to any of them the way it had to Zalen. It avoided eye contact, wouldn't approach the food basin unless the room was empty, and once shattered a remote monitoring drone by spitting a glob of digestive acid at it. The behavioral specialist arrived on the 4th day. A Caraxi named Dr. Uvith, all translucent membranes and elongated limbs, with a translator node that clipped to the base of its neck. It requested to meet Zalen. They sat across from one another in a debriefing room, separated by a thin field of static light. Not for containment, just a psychological buffer. You approach the Varax without fear, Yuvith said. That's atypical. I was injured and cornered, Zaylin replied. I didn't have a lot of options. And now, I'd still walk in there if they let me. Yuvith blinked slowly. Why? It listened. It watched. That's more than most people give it credit for. Its species has no documented social behavior. Maybe we're just not looking in the right way. Yuvith leaned forward. Would you consent to an escorted reintroduction? Zaylin didn't hesitate. Yes. Outside the room, Mekith and Frel watched the feed. Do you think he's wrong? Frel asked. Mekith's fins fluttered once. I think he's proving we might be. Inside the containment chamber, the Varax lifted its head. It had already smelled the protein bar. Zaylin stepped into the containment chamber again 7 days after the initial breach, wearing nothing more than standard medbay scrubs, a compression brace on his ribs, and a synthetic sling for his wrist. No armor, no drones, no weapons. Just a pouch of protein bars and a slow, deliberate gait. The chamber was warmer than last time, the lighting even lower. He paused at the threshold, not because he was afraid the fear had passed days ago, but because the Varax was already standing. It didn't growl, didn't flare its plates. It just watched him, head tilted slightly, nostrils twitching. You remember me, huh? The Varax blinked once. Then slowly, it sat. Zaylin approached, careful not to jostle the sling. He tossed a bar to the floor halfway between them. The Varax sniffed it, dragged it closer with a claw, and ate it in 2 methodical bites. That's the last of the peanut butter ones, Zaylin said. You're getting into the weird flavors now. Sweet bean and algae, whatever genius thought, that was a good idea. The Varax didn't react to the speech, but its head turned slightly at the word algae. I know. Disgusting. He lowered himself to sit cross-legged, wincing at the pull in his side. The floor was cool through the scrubs. The Varax didn't move. From the observation window, Yuvith and Mekith watched in silence. Dr. Yuvith's secondary limbs twitched rhythmically, a Caraxi gesture indicating deep processing. There is no posture of aggression, Yuvith said. No defensive tension. This is not a containment situation. It is a social one. Mekith folded its arms. We can't base protocol on one anomaly. We can if the anomaly is repeatable. In the chamber, Zaylin took another bar from the pouch and unwrapped it before holding it out. The Varax didn't lunge. It didn't snatch. It leaned down, jaws opening just enough to accept the bar from his palm. Its teeth brushed his fingers lightly, but unmistakably. I'm gonna need hazard pay, Zaylin muttered. I just hand-fed a creature with a bite force stronger than a trash compactor. The Varax lowered itself to the floor beside him, not curled this time, but stretched out, head level with his knees. Its breathing was slower than last time. More even. Zaylin glanced toward the glass. Tell me you're recording this. They were. By the 3rd hour, the Varax had fallen asleep. Zaylin remained still, back resting against the chamber wall, legs stretched. His ribs ached, but the brace helped. He rotated his shoulder carefully, testing the limits of the sling. The door opened behind the observation panel. Frel entered carrying a tray with 2 mugs. I thought you might want something hot, he said, offering one to Mekith. Mekith eyed the steam rising from the mug. Is this human safe? Frel shrugged. Barely. Yuvith declined a drink, focusing on the biometric data scrolling across the side display. Its cortisol levels have dropped by 70% over the past 2 hours. Mekith sipped the drink and grimaced. Tastes like fermented carbon. Earth calls it coffee. They drink it voluntarily. Incredible. Frel tapped the window. How long do you think you can stay in there? Until the creature wakes, Yuvith replied. We need to observe its reaction to his departure. Inside, Zaylin shifted. He pulled the pouch closed and tucked it under his leg. Hey, he said softly. I'm gonna stand up now, all right? Don't freak out. The Varax didn't stir. He rose slowly, using the wall for balance. His legs were stiff, and the brace tugged uncomfortably, but he managed it without groaning aloud. He took a step, then another, toward the exit. The Varax's eye opened, tracking his movement. Zaylin paused. Just going to the door. You're okay. The Varax blinked. Its head remained low. He reached the threshold and stepped through. The door sealed behind him. Vitals unchanged, Yuvith said. No signs of stress. Frel looked impressed. You've just redefined containment interaction. No, Yuvith said. He's redefined communication. 2 days later, They brought Zalen into the briefing chamber, where Yuvith had coordinated a full analysis of the Varax's neurological responses. Graphs hovered in the air, lit in green and violet, showing patterns no one had expected. "It's not unpredictable," Yuvith said, gesturing to one of the diagrams. "It's just not linear. It processes external stimuli through a layered sensory matrix: sound, heat, scent, and kinetic motion all at once. So it doesn't understand threats the way we do," Zalen said. "It doesn't understand safety the way we do, either," Yuvith added. "But it learned. From you." Mekith tapped the edge of a data panel, flipping to a new chart. "You think this interaction could be replicated? With another human? Possibly. With another Varax? Unknown. And if it hadn't calmed down?" Zalen shrugged. "Then I'd have ended up mulch." Yuvith's limbs fluttered. "We believe the Varax imprinted on your behavior, not as a pack leader, as a tolerated presence." "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever called me," Zalen muttered. The next morning, they cleared the containment bay for a final test. Zalen stood at the edge of the chamber, this time with no protein bars and no restraints on the creature. The Varax stood across from him, alert but not tense. He raised one hand in greeting. "Hey." The Varax stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. It stopped 2 paces away and lowered its head. Zalen reached out and touched the side of its jaw. From the observation deck, Yuvith nodded once. "That concludes the study." Mekith turned to Frel. "We're retiring the tranquilizer lances." Frel looked almost disappointed. "I just calibrated mine." Zalen didn't stay much longer. His injuries were healing fast under standard regenerative care, and the planetary survey team was due to rotate back to surface operations. Before he left, he visited the containment chamber one last time. The Varax met him at the door. He didn't bring any snacks. "Looks like you're officially not a monster anymore," he said with a grin. "Just misunderstood." The Varax let out a low, steady exhale. "Me too, sometimes." They stood there for a moment. Then Zalen turned and walked out. The chamber door closed. Mekith watched him go. "Not bad. For a botanist." Frel crossed his arms. "We're never living this down, are we?" "No," Mekith said. "And we shouldn't."